and from the headquarters of the European Parliament. We are very thrilled and excited to welcome so many speakers, high-level speakers from different countries, but mainly from Israel and from the Arab Gulf countries, and also from the Middle East, like Iraq, Lebanon, and Ahwaz. So, without any further delay, I will leave the floor to MEP Martuccello. MEP Martuccello, who was the head of delegation of the EU delegation to Israel, and also to so many. Now he is substitute, and also he has worked so many times by organizing so many conferences regarding the Middle East, but also regarding Iran, threat of Iran. Can you please switch off your mics? Would you please switch off your mics? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Manil, mind if I ask? Do you mind if I ask who is the assistant, and maybe they can help with that, because otherwise there will be interruptions over time.
Yes, yes. I just call him in a few minutes.
The host of the meeting, they can block everyone and not be allowed to speak, because you can see, I don't think that everyone understands it.
Would you please close the mics? Everyone, can you please close the mics except me, Ruth Isaac, who is also my co-moderator, and Mr. Fulvio Martuccello, who is going to have in a minute the floor to speak. Thank you very much, because otherwise we cannot listen to each other. Thank you. So, as I said, Mr. Martuccello, MEP Martuccello, has held a lot of meetings here in the European Parliament and supports the Ahwazi cause, especially calling for freedom and for justice, and also calling the European Union to stop unhuman and unjust treatment of prisoners in Ahwaz, but also women's rights and children, and the climate change problem which is going on right now. Without any further delay, I leave the floor to MEP Martuccello for his work. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Hey, do you introduce the guest?
لحلقة جديدة من برنامج
Yes.
المشي في زمن الكورونا. نحن مع شخصية فلسطينية سياسية ولكنها العالم.
Yes, you can speak, Mr. Martuccello. Thank you.
في 15 أيار مايو كانت هي نكبة حلت على أرض فلسطين والفلسطينيين.
Yeah. Tu.
Fai un intervento?
Sì.
Il mio intervento ora?
Sì, tu interventi. So in a few minutes, Mr. Martuccello is going to start his speech.
The European Parliament constantly follows up the events inside Al-Quds, which is a occupation. The people of Al-Quds are suffering from a regular persecution, human rights violation, and the confiscation of their lands by the regime of Iran. We call on the international community to push the regime of Iran to stop torturing the Ahwazi politicians and the human rights activists who are struggling for their freedom and dignity. The non-Persian nations, such as the Arabs, Turks, Baluch, and the Kurds, are facing tremendous difficulties on the soil for their own lands. Thus, we urge the international community to take decisive actions against the brutal regime of Iran, which enables the people to end hardships and injuries. Al-Quds, which is one of the richest lands of the Middle East, its people suffer from absolute poverty, and the regimes spend a major part of the Ahwazi wealth on militias in Iraq and other parts of the Middle East, destabilizing the security of the region. The European Parliament follows up the situation in Al-Waz, the other parts of Iran in general, and in particular the non-Persian nations within Iran's political geography the regime of Iran transfers the Awazi.
بس نبيل عمر طبعا كنت لا تتذكر النكبة ولكن هناك أجواء في العائلة مشهد قبل أن
water in order to push them out from Iranian human move against the oppressed people indicate there is no real state in Iran, but rather gangs working for their own interest are suffering from a profound poverty and the
Hello, Abu Khalid.
Iranian regime tortures children under the age of 15. This is against the human rights law. Therefore, we demand harsh punishment for those responsible who are involved in these inhuman actions. The non-Persian nations with the Iranian political map, such as Al-Wazi people, Baluch, Turks, Kurds, are suffering from tremendous difficulties, such as torture, jail, displacement, poverty, starvation, and exhaustion. We are planning to shed the light on the ongoing political and human rights situation in Iran and other parts of the Middle East. The Awazi people are struggling to free their people from the ongoing injustice. Iranian regime is crossing all red lines and defiant to the international rules and regulations. Iranian regime has devasted Syria, Iraq, Yemen, Lebanon, and persecuted its people. Hence, we take up the matter with the other respected members of the European Parliament to take the necessary actions against regime's brutality. The regime of Iran has fabricated a false allegation against Mr. Habib Yabor and his companions. The Danish government has arrested them since months ago, following a false accusation by the Iranian regime. Thus, we request the Danish government to release them and give them the opportunity to defend themselves with respect to the Danish law. So, thank you for participating in this webinar, which is organized by European Association for the Defense of the Minorities and the APP, and which brings together Israel and Arab leaders, mainly after the peace deal signed by UAE, Bahrain, and Israel. The European Union welcomes this huge step towards peace and coexistence between these nations and hopes to accompany the other countries of the region for a similar step. Thank you, and hope you will have a good work and a good debate today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Martuccello. It was the opening remarks by MEP Martuccello today. And now we move to the speakers. We start with Arab speakers. Dr. Khalaf Al-Kaabi. Dr. Khalaf Al-Kaabi is from the head of the Foreign Affairs Committee of Asmala organization, the Arab struggle movement for the liberation of Al-Ahwaz, and he was an activist calling for independence and calling for equal rights within the Ahwazi population, but also he was also threatened by the regime so many times, and right now he is struggling by organizing let's say conferences all over the world, but also trying to to sensitize people and the other populations, the other minorities within Iran to come up together against the regime and to call for dignity, for freedom and for equality. Dr. Khalaf, the floor is yours. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Hope you and your loved ones keeping well and safe and away from the coronavirus, which had a negative impact on everything. I'm immensely happy to be with you, and let us work together. I used to say these few words about human relationship and how to develop them and create relations between all nations around the world as one family. That God has created us equally. There is no difference between anyone on this planet, regardless to our colors, nationalities, religions, languages, and any. We are human, so we have to love and embrace each other in order to create a fraternal relations between all nations around the globe and secure our next generation's peaceful world. Also, I would like to congratulate the United Arab Emirates, the Kingdom of Bahrain, and the State of Israel for the normalization of the relations between them. Without a doubt, these relations will change the equation in the Arabian Gulf and the entire Middle East as well. The wise policies of the United Arab Emirates over the years have proven that all countries can cross difficult barriers and create fraternal relations with all countries of the region on the basis of joint cooperation. Hence, I urge the international community to support this relation and the normalization between the three countries. All countries following the same, which strengthen relations between countries and weakens against the people of the region and other parts of the world, and secures peace and stability. The goal of the conference is to shed light on several issues in Iran and the occupied land of Al-Ahwaz and the two islands under Iran's occupation, and other nations within Iran's map and the neighboring countries, and the damage caused by the Iranian regime in the region and other parts of the world. As you are aware that the regime of Iran is crossing red lines.
Yes, we have to.
Excuse me, Miss Malal. I can't, lots of interferences there, lots of voices come across, and I can't,
Okay.
Unfortunately, There's lots of talks in between.
Okay, can you hear me, everyone? Please, can you shut up the mic where the speaker is speaking? Because right now, for the coronavirus, there is a problem with the assistant cannot go to the room of Mr. Barchero, so there is problem to shut off the mic from the room. So if you can, please, can you shut out your mic, and then we give the floor to the speaker every time, according to the order of the speeches. Thank you. Go on, Dr. Khalaf. You are welcome.
Thank you. Hence, I urge the international community to support this relation and the normalization between the three countries, and wish to see more countries following the same, which strengthen relations between countries and weakens plots against the people of the region and other parts of the world, and secures peace and stability. The goal of the conference is to shed light on several issues in Iran and the occupied land of Al-Ahwaz and the three Emirates Islands under Iran's occupation, and other nations within Iran's map and the neighboring countries, and the damage caused by the Iranian regime in the region and other parts of the world. As you are aware that the regime of Iran is crossing red lines changing demographic systems of the occupied land of Al-Ahwaz systematically, pushing people out from their own lands on daily basis, jailing them, torturing them, and many of them were executed within their notorious prisons without trial. These crimes against our Ahwazi people are among the most heinous crimes committed by the Iranian brutal regime. The Iranian regime intends to expel 2 million Ahwazis from some areas of Al-Ahwaz under pretext that there is no proof that these lands belong to them. And this new conspiracy will defy all international laws, rules and regulations. Ahwazis have lived on these lands for thousands of years. And the other conspiracy is to turn large areas of Al-Ahwaz into military areas. This gives legitimacy to the police and IRGC criminals shooting at the people without legal accountability. Dozens have been executed by the politicized and inhuman judiciary. Thousands have been arrested and imprisoned according to the latest report from Al-Ahwaz. Children under 15 years old have been arrested and tortured. We did not see such crimes anywhere in the world. Khamenei, the criminal, and his corrupt gang plunder our wealth, oil, gas, and fertile lands, and deprive our people of the most basic rights. Our Ahwazi people live in a miserable condition. They suffer from starvation and absolute poverty. Hundreds of children die from extreme poverty and lack of nutrition. Ahwazi women are deprived of the most basic rights. They are deprived of work or participation in social matters. And at the same time, they are persecuted by the inhuman regime of Iran. Racial discrimination against the Ahwazi women crosses the limit of patience. Thus, we request your excellencies to take up the matter with the international community to end the Ahwazi women hardship. Almost all peoples in Iran's political geography are suffering from persecution and racism and discrimination. It means that the people are marginalized by the corrupted mullahs regime. The wealth and all resources of the country are divided between officials of the regime, and the people suffer from starvation and systematic poverty. We were able to create a strong relationship with all nations, with the non-Persian nations within Iran's political geography during the past years. These people also suffer from Iranian persecution and occupation of their lands. We, the Ahwazi, Turks, Baluch, Kurds, and many of the people were able to form a united front against the Iranian regime, and were able to mobilize hundreds of thousands of people to demonstrate against the regime, demanding their legitimate rights. The Arab struggle movement for the liberation of Al-Ahwaz is a pioneering on Al-Ahwaz arena, and its impact on a large segment of the people, and it is able to move politically inside and outside Al-Ahwaz. Hence, your political and moral support enables us to continue and put the necessary pressure on the Iranian brutal regime. The backward regime of Iran has destroyed the environment in Al-Ahwaz by draining the marshes and rivers deliberately to expel the Ahwazi people from their own lands. And this is a major crime against humanity. The destruction of the environment in Al-Ahwaz also harms the global environment. The Ahwazi marshes were among the most beautiful environmental areas in the region and the world as well. Millions of migratory birds come to these marshes throughout the year, and all kinds of fishes, which were the source of livelihood for thousands of Ahwazi families. The deprivation of the Ahwazis of these resources was the cause of absolute poverty among the people of Al-Ahwaz. Al-Ahwaz is known for its oil and gas and fertile land. Iranian regime spends major part of the oil and gas revenue on their militias in Iraq, Syria, Yemen, and Lebanon, whereas 90% of the people suffer from poverty and starvation. The region suffers security and economically due to Iranian interferences, the Arabian Gulf countries and the entire Middle East as well. And these interventions were reflected in all countries around the world. And we see that negative results from Iran's interferences in the affairs of the other countries. The peoples within Iran's geography suffer from the absence of a real regime that works for the benefit of the people, and they do not feel safe under the rule of the mullah's regime. Therefore, several popular demonstrations to change the regime took place over the past years, but they were brutally suppressed by the brutal regime of Iran. Hope this constructive conference could convey the views of the Ahwazi people who are struggling to free their land from the Iranian occupation. For decades, the Ahwazi people are trying to be part of the international community. The Ahwazis are trying with all their might to free themselves from the Iranian domination and to be part of the free nations. We seek our dignity and freedom and want to be free like the rest of the people of the world. We, the Ahwazis, respect the international laws and know the political equation in the Middle East and beyond, and do not want to be outside the international law. So we request you to put us on the political map as a nation who are trying to have an independent entity based on respect for the laws. Like any other nation, it lives on its land without fear of arrest and executions. We also demand the cessation of any nuclear activities on the Ahwazi soil. We also demand the prevention of a Chinese presence on the Ahwazi land, and also ask the international community to intervene quickly to prevent Iran from its permanent and unjustified armament, which poses a threat to the security of the region. I also demand the release of our brother, Mr. Habib Jabbar, who was arrested, and his companions based on a fabricated and false charges. The Iranian regime fabricated the accusation against him without giving any tangible reason. Therefore, we demand his release as soon as possible. We respect the Danish government and their rules and regulations, and certain that the respected Danish government would take the necessary actions against our legitimate demand. I take the opportunity to thank His Excellency Mr. Trump for saving the region from the evil of the Quds Force Commander Soleimani, who killed and displaced millions in Syria and Iraq and Yemen and Lebanon and Al-Ahwaz as well. Therefore, we ask God Almighty to see Mr. Trump in the White House in the next term and wish him success. We are confident that Mr. Trump will change the equation in the region for the benefit of the nation. I wish Your Excellencies happiness and success. May God protect our people and all nations around the world. And I wish to see happiness and peace prevailing the whole world. I immensely was happy to be with you, ladies and gentlemen. God bless you and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Khalaf Kabi from Al-Ahwaz, the Arab struggle movement for the liberation of Al-Ahwaz. It was a very inspiring and very active speech, and we are very honored to have you on this panel. Let's move to another very influential speaker from the Middle East. Very honored to have him today is His Excellency MP Jamal Bulhassan. Jamal Bulhassan, who is a former member of the Parliament, member of the Foreign Affairs, Defense and National Security Committee, Secretary General of the Arab Parliamentary Initiative, member of the Global Parliamentary Network, Chairman of the Businessman Committee, and Chairman of the Board of Directors of Aman Consulting. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I say hello for everybody, and thank you to give me the chance to speak in your meetings. And I'm sorry, I will speak in my language, the Arab language. So excuse me from everybody. Can I?
Yeah, please do. We will do a translation. I mean, later on we'll do a small, let's say, summary of what you have said during the speech.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
الحقيقة إذا أردنا أن نستعرض التدخلات الإيرانية والتهديدات الإيرانية للدول العربية، وأول ما نبدأ به هو احتلال النظام الإيراني لقطر عزيز على قلوب كل ألا هو القطر الأحواز، دولة الأحواز العربية. هذه الدولة التي تم احتلالها من قبل الإيرانيين، وهي الآن تعيش مرحلة خطرة جدا بسبب هذه التدخلات أو هذا الاحتلال. إذا أردنا أن نستعرض أو نعطي هذا الوضع حقه، فإن هذا الاحتلال يمثل احتلال غاشم لجزء كبير من الوطن العربي وعزيز علينا كلنا كعرب. وهو في الحقيقة يعني دولة الأحواز تمثل شريان اللي في الدول العربية، ويجب على الدول العربية وعلى الجامعة العربية وعلى جميع المنظمات العربية أن تعمل على تحرير هذا الجزء الغالي على كل قلوب العرب من خلال تحريك قضايا على النظام الإيراني لاسترجاع هذا القطر العربي. وطبعا النظام الإيراني لم يحتل فقط الأحواز، ولكن احتل 3 جزر عربية، ألا وهي الجزر الإماراتية والكل يعرف، ألا وهي طنب الكبرى وطنب الصغرى وجزيرة أبو موسى، وحولهم إلى قواعد عسكرية. وهذا طبعا الاحتلال الغاشم لهذه الجزر جاء إبان حكم الشاه السابق. وطبعا التهديدات الإيرانية للأقطار العربية والدول العربية ليس وليد الصدفة، وليس في الحقيقة يعني جاء كاحتلال عابر، ولكن جاء نتيجة أيديولوجية وتخطيط واستراتيجية للنظام الإيراني. كان من قبل يعني الشاه يطالب بمملكة البحرين لضمها إلى إيران، وذلك منذ عام 1956 عندما علم بأن البريطانيين سوف يغادرون البحرين، وطالب بالبحرين عام 1956. ولكن أعتقد أن البريطانيين عقدوا صفقة مع الشاه، وصارت مقايضة في الحقيقة على أن يقوم الشاه باحتلال الجزر الثلاث ويصرف نظر عن مملكة البحرين أو عن دولة البحرين آنذاك. وفي عام 1970 عندما استقلت مملكة البحرين عن الاستعمار البريطاني، جاء الشاه وطالب بالبحرين. طبعا أنا قاعد أعطي يعني نبذة تاريخية أولا لكي نعرف ما هي يعني آلية المطالبات الإيرانية والتدخلات الإيرانية في الدول العربية. في عام 1970 طالب الشاه بأن تكون البحرين جزء من إيران، واعتبرها المحافظة 14، ولكن كان هناك موقف للدول العربية وعلى رأسها المملكة العربية السعودية وكذلك جمهورية مصر العربية، عندما يعني وقفت موقف مشرف في وجه الشاه، وحصل استفتاء شعبي من قبل الشعب البحريني من قبل الأمم المتحدة. والبحرين طبعا نتيجة هذا الاستفتاء الذي صوت عليه كل شعب البحرين سنة وشيعة بكل أطيافه وبكل مكوناته بأن البحرين هي دولة عربية خليفية. والحمد لله الشاه التزم بقرار الأمم المتحدة وصرف نظر عن المطالبة بالبحرين. هذه نبذة تاريخية. ولكن منذ عام 1979 وعند قدوم شدة الحكم بعد سقوط الشاه والكل يعرف بهذا، طالبت إيران بمرة أخرى بأن تكون البحرين هي جزء من إيران أو ترجع البحرين إلى إيران. وفي البرلمان الإيراني وضعوا كرسي شاغر وكتبوا عليه محافظة البحرين، وإلى الآن هذا الوضع قائم في البرلمان الإيراني، لكي نعرف مدى خطورة التهديدات الإيرانية ومدى خطورة المخطط الإيراني على الدول العربية. إذن الآن لدينا 4 دول محتلة من قبل، أو 5 دول محتلة من قبل الإيراني. دولة الأحواز العربية، طبعا العراق أنا أعتبرها دولة محتلة لأن إيران تسيطر على المقدرات العراقية وهي صاحبة القرار في العراق. وسوريا طبعا الجريحة، سوريا اليوم في الحقيقة تؤن تحت وطأة النظام الإيراني والتدخلات الإيرانية. وكذلك لا ننسى لبنان الذي يسيطر عليه حزب الله أو ما يسمى بحزب الله. هذا الحزب في الحقيقة اختطف القرار اللبناني ووضع لبنان تحت وطأة النظام الإيراني وتحت وطأة هذا الحزب الخبيث الذي في الحقيقة أخر لبنان مئات السنين. لبنان التي كانت عروس العرب وكانت دولة متقدمة جدا أصبحت اليوم متأخرة جدا سياسيا، اقتصاديا، اجتماعيا، ثقافيا. إيران كانت هي مكتبة العرب في الحقيقة، وكانت لبنان كانت مكتبة العرب، وكانت دولة الثقافة العربية ودولة الاقتصاد ودولة بنكية. اليوم لبنان أصبحت صفر من كل هذه الأشياء نظرا لتدخلات هذا النظام السافر وتدخلات حزبه أو سيطرة حزبه على مرافق الدولة وعلى كل ما يعني يهم الدولة وقيام الدولة وتطور الدولة. نعود إلى اليمن التي يعني الآن تؤن كذلك تحت وطأة ما يسمى بالحوثي. فالحوثي اليوم يسيطر على نصف اليمن بالرغم من يعني جهود التحالف العربي بقيادة المملكة العربية السعودية، ولولا يعني حكمة خادم الحرمين الشريفين وتدخله في الوقت المناسب لإيران ابتلعت اليمن كلها. ولكن الحمد لله رب العالمين جاء قرار خادم الحرمين الشريفين الملك سلمان بن عبد العزيز في وضع حد لهذه التدخلات، ولله الحمد اليمن بدأت تتحرك النظام الإيراني. نأتي إلى التدخلات الإيرانية والخطر الإيراني الذي يهدد دول المنطقة. إيران اليوم تهدد معظم الدول الخليجية ومعظم الدول العربية. التدخلات الإيرانية اليوم في مملكة البحرين ومنذ عام 1979 ونحن نعاني في مملكة البحرين من هذه التدخلات السافرة من خلال الأذناب الإيرانية والميليشيات الإيرانية الإرهابية المجرمة التي تعيث في البحرين فسادا من خلال الأعمال الإرهابية، التفجيرات، القتل، الهجوم على رجال الأمن، قطع الشوارع، تعطيل الحياة العامة في مملكة البحرين. ولكن ولله الحمد والمنة بحكمة القيادة الرشيدة ويعني دعم القوى الأمنية في مملكة البحرين استطاعت مملكة البحرين أن تضع حد لهذه التدخلات. ولله الحمد وزارة الداخلية قامت بدورها والأجهزة الأمنية قامت بدورها في وضع حد لهذه التدخلات الإيرانية، وتم القبض على معظم الإرهابيين وتمت محاكمتهم محاكمة عادلة بحكم القانون ومن خلال القضاء، وأعطوا كل حقوقهم الإنسانية والمدنية في التقاضي. ويعني معظمهم في السجون نظرا لإقامتهم واعترافاتهم بالأدلة والإثباتات، وكذلك يعني كل ما تم بيانه عندهم اعترفوا بأنهم هم نعم هناك دعم من الحرس الثوري الإيراني وهم يحضرون أو حضروا إلى مملكة البحرين للقيام بالأعمال الإرهابية وقلب نظام الحكم وتغيير الحكم وما إلى ذلك. هذا بالنسبة للبحرين. وكذلك التفجيرات التي حصلت في المنطقة الشرقية بالمملكة العربية السعودية وفي دولة الكويت. كل هذه الأعمال في الحقيقة كان أساسها ومنبعها هو إيران والحرس الثوري الإيراني. طبعا إيران تهدد وجودنا كعرب، إيران تهدد وجودنا العربي وتريد محو الوجود العربي، وفي الحقيقة يعني بالنسبة لهم يعني ثورتهم أو منهجهم هو منهج طائفي، يريدون تغيير الطائفة، يريدون محو كل ما هو متصل بالسنة، يريدون تغيير الدين الإسلامي وقلبه إلى يعني نظام شيعي يقوم على وطبعا هذا شيء مرفوض وغير مقبول والكل يرفضه، ويعني كل الدول العربية تشتم وترفض هذا المشروع الإيراني الصفوي. وطبعا إيران وللأسف الشديد تستغل الشيعة العرب في بسط مشروعها الصفوي. إيران ليست دولة دينية، إذا أردنا الحقيقة وإذا أردنا أن نتحدث بشفافية وبوضوح، إيران ليست دولة دينية، إيران دولة أيديولوجية، لديها أيديولوجية تريد يعني بسط العرق الإيراني، ولا تهتم بالدين، وتعامل الشيعة العرب وللأسف الشديد كأنهم يعني العرق الدوني، وهم العرق الأعلى، فتنظر إلى العرب على أنه عرق دون يعني الأعراق يعني الإيرانية. فيعني هذه طبعا مناشدة مني للشيعة العرب ولكل العرب بأن يقفوا مع حكامهم ومع أنظمتهم، لأن هي هذه الأنظمة هي التي سوف تثبت الدولة وتحافظ على كيان الدولة وكيان المجتمع. وشكرا لكم.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jamal Bouhassan, Your Excellency from the Kingdom of Bahrain, and we want to address you all my congratulations and the congratulations of all people here from the European Parliament concerning the peace deal with Israel, and you are really paving the way for the region, and it's a very impressive and very inspiring step towards peace in the Middle East. Thank you very much. So I have just to sum up what Mr. Bouhassan said, and then give the floor to my friend and my co-moderator Ruth Isaac to introduce our Israeli speakers. So Mr. Bouhassan spoke about the Iranian intervention in the Arab countries, and he made a mapping, a historic mapping of what happened. The Arab countries should support Al-Ahwazi people to ask for independence against the Iranian invasion, and they said that Arab countries, all Arab countries should support the Ahwazi cause. Iran wanted to invade Bahrain. And right now we have 5 countries invaded by Iran, like Al-Ahwaz, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and he considered that Hezbollah in Lebanon has transformed the country from a very developed country into a country which is underdeveloped, especially in terms of economy, politics, and culture, which was not the case actually before, because Lebanon was really what he said, like the maid of the Mediterranean, was really a very developed country. But unfortunately, the Iranian control of the country economically and politically transformed the country into an underdeveloped and also going bankrupt right now, which is we will see in a minute with famous journalist Maria Malouf what is really happening in Lebanon. He also spoke about the Houthis in Yemen and how they are supported by the Iranian militia, but hopefully King Salman of Saudi Arabia intervened, and also most of the Arab countries and Gulf countries are threatened by Iran. They intervened in the Kingdom of Bahrain through their militia, and also hopefully they were arrested. These people were arrested thanks to the Ministry of Interior, and the terrorists admitted that they were supported by the Iranian militia to put trouble into the kingdom. Iran threatens the existence of Arabs. They want to eradicate the Arab identity and the Sunni tradition. They want also to change the Islamic religion into the Shia. Iran exploits the Arab Shias to serve its goals. They have, the Iranian regime has an ideological existence. They consider the Arab people and Shia as inferior. And the Arab Shia should really support their government, especially in Lebanon, Syria, and Iraq. Thank you very much. I leave the floor to my friend and my co-moderator, Ruth Isaac, which I really congratulate and I thank very much for her efforts for bringing the Israeli speakers right now with us. Thank you, Ruth. For those who didn't know Ruth, she is the head of EU relations of EGA, European Jewish Association.
Thank you. So we are based in Brussels, and I want to say, first of all, thank you for inviting us, and thank you for being at this webinar with us. It is so wonderful to see such a variety of people from all these different backgrounds. We really appreciate your friendship and obviously to MP Machuela for being the host. I'm going to introduce our first speaker, which is Mr. Eli Hazan. He's the Director of Foreign Relations at the Likud Party. I assume you know that the Likud Party in Israel is the party of the Prime Minister. Eli is a regular guest and contributor to many Israeli and international news channels. He has previously served as the advisor to the Minister of Education, parliamentary advisor to the chairman of the Likud faction, and he's a publicist at newspapers. He has a master's degree in history from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. So Eli, welcome, and we'd love to hear what you have to say for the meeting.
Okay, thank you, Ruth. Thank you, Manel. It is very important, this kind of connection, and thank you, MEP Martuccello. I would like to start by saying that I want to congratulate you, all of you, in this webinar. We are celebrating Sukkot in Israel, and I would like to say happy Sukkot, happy holiday to everyone. As long as I know, this is the first webinar ever that taking part friends from UAE, South Yemen, Lebanon, Israel, Ahwaz, Bahrain, and Iraq. And this webinar speaks about the Iranian threat, but I don't want to speak about the threat. I want to speak about the Middle East promise. Iran is a threat, and we are going to be a promise. Most of the time, people think that you can defeat Iran only by military force. It is true to some extent, but I believe that we can defeat Iran in another way, which is no less important, by cooperation among our people. Think about the potential that we have. Every nation, every human being, every group can think about every idea, and the cooperation among us can, lead us into a reality. The Iranian regime will invest, a lot of effort in killing people, but we are going to invest a lot in improving our lives and, preserving life. These things are relevant right now, especially now during the COVID-19, the corona crisis, the pandemic. The cooperation among, different forces in this region can lead into a kind of vaccine to corona. I mean, I know that Israel and UAE have a joint initiative in order to find this kind of solution, but it's not only that. And I'm going to be very short. I have a kind of a request from all of you. Try to bring more and more people to this dialogue, because if you want to win, we must bring more people to this dialogue. The more we have, the more we succeeded. More than that, I took, in my personal views, a mission to bring the Arab-Israeli citizens into this kind of dialogue between Israel and the members of the countries in the region. I'm so happy that Fuad is with us here. I hope that very soon we will be able to meet face-to-face and not by Zoom, inshallah. In any case, I will leave my details on the chat in order to promote more cooperation, not only political but others. I want to wish very good luck to our friends in El Ahwaz. Thank you very much. I'm so happy that former MK, Dr. Anat Berko, is with us. She is more special about the vision, and I'm quite sure that would be very interesting to listen to what she said. Thank you very much, Ruth, again, and have a wonderful day, and thank you for the comments from our friends from the neighboring countries.
Thank you. So Eli is specifically his work with the Likud party is to build relations. So do reach out to him, and we're going to make his details available. Eli asked if possible for part of his time to actually be given to former member of parliament. I call it parliament. Is a former member of Knesset in Israel, Dr. Anat Berko. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. While she was a member of the Knesset until last year, 2019. While she was a Knesset member, she served as a strategic and security advisor to the Prime Minister. She was the head of, specifically on the subcommittee dealing with cybersecurity, and served as a member of the Knesset Security and Foreign Affairs Committee. I want to say that Dr. Berko is also an author of numerous articles and books, and she's a world-renowned expert on the issue of terrorism, and policymakers reach out to her specifically on issues that have to do with suicide bombers, their handlers, and confronting, obviously, all these issues. But I'm sure that she's not here to speak about that, and Dr. Berko, welcome.
Thank you, Ruti. And I would like to say a word about my background. You know, I'm Iraqi Jewish origin, so I consider myself as an Arab Jew, because the first language that I heard at home was Arabic. Although I married an Ashkenazi guy from Holocaust survivor family that is much more fluent in Arabic, Dr. Reuven Berko, than me. But in front of our children, when we don't want that the children understand, we speak in Arabic. So, with you, great pleasure, and thank you, Eli, for this opportunity. I thought about speaking about the pandemic, about cybersecurity, about the opportunities in the region. And cybersecurity is very, very relevant, but it must go to this repressive state-sponsored terrorism, state of all her identity. Entity is terrorism, and creating militias, terror groups like Hamas, Houthi, Hezbollah, Shia militias, and all those group of terror, like military supported and ideologically supported by and we face the same challenge that actually the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu identified many years ago. And you know, the Jewish people didn't have any problem with Iran. My father, when he fled from Baghdad, he fled through Iran. He was fluent in Farsi. He stayed in Iran 2 years. And after that, he made Aliyah. He immigrated to Israel. Made Aliyah to Israel. And was in the 50s, late 40s. At that time, we didn't have any problem with the Iranians. After the revolution, the Shia revolution, we see very aggressive country that want to export their ideology to the region, and not just to the region. Everywhere you see the proxies of Iran, and we are very lucky that now President Trump, that all of us wish him good health, we see that every place they are actually acting in military way, supporting terror with weapons, with ideology, and actually we see a lot of jihadi groups related to Iran. So if somebody thought that in Syria the West is going to eliminate ISIS, Daesh, and to get the Iranian instead, I don't think that this is the right direction. Because the Iranians are not less than the Shia version of Daesh. And we see this conflict between the Sunni and the Shia going for 1,400 years ago, still live. And but we see another thing, that it's not just this conflict which I call the sushi conflict, it's also another conflict.
Dr. Perkov, I think you have accidentally muted yourself for some reason. I'm sorry about that. Just the last 1 second, it wasn't long.
So, so what we have now, it's cooperation with the region. It's like this peace agreement, which is so important. And I wish that Lebanon and other countries will be inside all the Arab countries, because Israel is not the enemy. And we see right now that Israel is not the enemy, and we can cooperate. And a word about cybersecurity, because I was the head of the subcommittee dealing with cybersecurity. I think that it's very relevant to cooperate in this field. And why? Because it's not just about military. Think about the pandemic that we have right now, the COVID-19. Think about a cyber attack that erased all the medical files of the people, or marked everybody with COVID, or marked everybody as healthy. Just something like that, just an example. I'm not speaking about cyber attacks on the aviation, transportation, and the Iranians are carrying out cyber attacks around the world. And sometimes we cannot identify them, but I think that when I'm saying we, it's all of us. But I think that Israel much more advanced in this dimension of the cyber security, and I think that it will be very good to cooperate related to military aspects, civil aspects, counterterrorism and crime. So the other aspect is the psychological warfare carried out by the Iranian against their neighbors, threatening them, using the proxies. And I heard Jamal speaking, and Khoy Jamal and Dr. Kabi about this situation and this oppression and this threatening of the Iranian. And it's about time to say enough is enough, and we should cooperate to be able to fight this threat that threaten all of us. We are on the same boat. So it's great to be with you today. I would like to wish you again shalom and salam, and be safe. We will fight those irhabiyun, and we will prevail, and we'll do it. Thank you.
Thank you. It's really wonderful having you with us today. And it's really interesting. I personally love when I hear Israelis or Jewish people that have that connection to the Arab world, and they can speak Arabic. And I think a lot of our Arab friends for sure appreciate it.
I just say one thing.
Yeah.
My grandfather immigrated from Iraq in 1907. So we are in the same side.
Ashlo.
Manel, would you like to introduce another of our speakers?
Yeah, please do, because we apologize. Dr. Dahi Khalfan is not available. He apologizes. So we have a speaker from the Arab side who is not available. So you can go ahead with another Israeli speaker if you want.
Okay, thank you. So we thought it was really important, other than having our two Jewish friends joining us together, today, to also have somebody who is from a Muslim background, Arab Muslim background from Israel. And his name is, there it is, Mr. Fuad Ahmad. You can unmute yourself. He is from north of Israel. He currently lives in Jerusalem. He has studied political science and communications at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. He works actually at the president's office, specifically in the legal department. And in terms of the Likud party, he is the head of the Muslim section in the Likud Foreign Affairs Department. So he's working together with Eli Hazan, who is the director of the Foreign Affairs policy of the Likud party. So welcome.
Thank you, everybody. Hello and Assalamu alaikum. Thanks for the invitation and thanks for making this important webinar. Thanks for Ruth, Manel, and for Mr. Falvio for the host. I hope that this meeting will not be the last. I hope also that we all benefit from this meeting so that all countries in the Middle East regions enjoy peace and stability. Excuse me, now I want to continue my speech in Arabic. It's okay?
Yes, I add the translation later, no problem. It's a very inspiring speech. I mean, it's a very good thing that you keep your Arabic in Israel, and it shows that there is a diversity in Israel, actually. So
absolutely.
Thank you, Manel.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay. السلام عليكم مجددا. أتمنى يكون هذا اللقاء ليس الأخير ونستفيد جميعا من هذا اللقاء لكي تنعم جميع دول منطقة الشرق الأوسط من السلام والاستقرار. عنوان هذا اللقاء هو تهديد إيران للسلام والأمن في الشرق الأوسط. وأن دولة إيران هي العائق الكبير بين عملية السلام والدول العربية. إنني أرى أن ليس هذا العائق الوحيد وأنه يوجد تحديات أخرى يجب الانتباه إليها كثيرا والتي لا تقل أهمية عن التهديد الإيراني. الآن سوف ألقي الضوء على دوري كمواطن عربي مسلم في دولة إسرائيل. أنا فخور جدا بكوني مواطن في هذه الدولة لأنها تدعم كل مواطن لديه طموح في تحقيقها. وأنا كمواطن من الأقلية العربية في إسرائيل هذه الدولة منحت لي الفرصة في تحقيق جميع طموحاتي ومن ضمنها تم قبولي في العمل في منصب جدا مهم وهو في مكتب رئيس دولة إسرائيل. والآن ولضيق الوقت سوف أتحدث عن كيفية استغلال جميع مناصبي لتقوية العلاقة بين إسرائيل مع الدول العربية والإسلامية بالإضافة إلى مساعدة أبناء مجتمع العربي في الدولة. في منصبي في مكتب رئيس الدولة أعمل في القسم القضائي كمساعد المستشارة القضائية للرئيس، ومن خلال منصبي هذا عرضت عدة مشاريع على رئيس الدولة لمساعدة أبناء المجتمع العربي، وأهمها مشروع مساعدة المواطنين العرب في أزمة الكورونا مما سببت من أضرار مادية كبيرة، بالإضافة للمشاريع المتعلقة في تقوية العلاقة بين إسرائيل والدول العربية. ومن المهم ذكر بأن الرئيس مرحب جدا في تنفيذ جميع هذه المشاريع والأفكار. أما في منصبي كمستشار الطلاب العرب كمسؤول تسويق المجتمع العربي عملت على عدة مشاريع مساعدة الطلاب العرب في التعليم الجامعي والأكاديمي في جامعة إسرائيل، والآن أعمل مع إدارة الجامعة العبرية بالقدس وهي الجامعة التي أتعلم بها الآن وهي من أعرق جامعة إسرائيل على مشروع التعاون الأكاديمي بين جامعة إسرائيل وجامعة الإمارات والبحرين على خلفية اتفاق السلام مما سيعود بالفائدة على أبناء جميع هذه الدول. وأخيرا في منصبي في قسم العلاقات الخارجية لحزب الليكود وهو الحزب الحاكم في إسرائيل أنا أعمل كمسؤول العلاقات العامة للدول العربية مما يعني تقوية علاقة إسرائيل وحزب الليكود مع الدول العربية. ومن خلال منصبي هذا أنني أعمل جاهدا لطرح عدة أفكار لتنشيط السلام مع الدول العربية. وكما ذكرت سابقا أنه يوجد عدة تحديات أخرى تواجه عملية السلام بين إسرائيل والدول العربية. أنا ووالدي لدينا مشروع يعمل على تأمين عملية السلام بين إسرائيل والإمارات والبحرين وكل دولة عربية أخرى، وسوف نعرضها قريبا على السيد نتنياهو رئيس الوزراء لكي يتبناه. ويسعدني بتعيين محادثة أخرى لكل من يرغب من السادة الحاضرين لدعم مناقشة المشروع. شكرا لكم، وأتمنى لقاءكم قريبا وجها لوجه وليس بالزوم. and thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Fuad Ahmed Mohammed. So it was a very good speech because he has given his example as a proud Muslim and Arab working in the Israeli government. And also he spoke a little bit about the Iranian threat in the region, and he said that it is not only in the Arab world, but the Iranian threat is a threat to the whole world, actually, to the region, actually. And he mentioned the opportunity that was given to him as a minority, as an Arab and Muslim in the Israeli government, to be an advisor to the president, and he proposed so many projects to help Arab countries, especially during the coronavirus. And he works in Jerusalem University in a collaboration project with UAE and University in Bahrain, and he works also to strengthen peace and security with Arab countries. So he has so many projects to strengthen this accord or this agreement of peace, not only with Bahrain and UAE, but also with so many other countries. Thank you for this testimonial. Thank you for this good speech, and we hope he helps also to meet us in not only virtually but in face-to-face. So hopefully we could have this opportunity.
Manel, all I was going to say is, obviously, I don't understand Arabic. You have a very strong accent, and you talk really faster than all the rest of the speakers. So I'm not sure. I assume that you can tell the difference in the accent.
You speak about the Arab accent?
Yes, when somebody speaks Arabic, you can tell which place of the world.
Yeah, but I think that Mohammed speaks literary Arabic. So this is the literary Arabic, like Mr. Javed Al Hassan. So he speaks very good literary Arabic. So it means that you study very good literature, Arabic literature in Israel. So congratulations.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I think that with the Israeli speakers, and I think that with the Arab and Muslim speaker, we can move to another Arab and Muslim speaker who is Mr. Amr Al-Bid, who is the president of the Southern Council of South Yemen. Mr. Amr Al-Bid, I don't know if you would like to introduce yourself to the speakers today. We are really honored to have you on this panel. And Mr. Jamal Bouhassan spoke about the Houthi, and the Iran threat in Yemen. So we would like to address our support to Yemen, especially during these times. And Mr. Martuchello held a conference last year about the crisis of Yemen and how we use the misery of young children in Yemen. And this is one of the biggest crises in the 21st century regarding young children. So I leave Mr. Al-Bith to speak about this issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Manal, for the introduction, and thanks to everyone for having me today with you, especially MP Love you and our brothers from Al-Ahwaz, who we share common suffering in the south. Also with them, as we were also occupied the north of Yemen in the 30 years ago, nearly 30 years ago. Well, I'm Amr Al-Bid from the Southern Transitional Council. I'm not the president of the council. I'm a member of the Presidential Council, as our president is Mr. Aydrus Zubaydi. Well, I'll try to brief you about the situation in the Arabian Peninsula, especially in the southern part of it. Well, from my reading on the development region, Iran's aspiration and efforts to become a dominating power, in the region has been in the making for decades, as you all know. To enhance, for sure, and achieve its objectives, Iran has had and enhanced its influence in different strategic phases in the region using different tools. But because of the influence of the US in the region and its protection of the Gulf states, Iran would have interfered even further and become more influential. Instead, Iran is trying to undermine the regimes that are regarded as allies to the US like, for example, Saudi Arabia. One of Iran's current and ongoing projects of destabilization of the region, which is taking place in the southern part of the Arabian Peninsula, is Yemen and the south. The role of Iran and its objectives in the southern part of the Arabian Peninsula has for a long time gone unnoticed, and it's only with the Houthis takeover of North Yemen in 2015 that for many it becomes clear for you. Well, the Houthis, as you all know, it's a Zaidi group close to the hardline, it was Shia sect, become their strategic tool in that location, and which is also used in its war for domination of the region. A similar sectarian strategy that also used in Iraq, Syria, Bahrain, and Lebanon. Whilst the Iranian support of the Houthis may seem to some as being recent, in fact, Iran's influence in North Yemen goes back 25 years ago. The relationship developed and strengthened during the Sixth War between the Houthis and the central government of Yemen. The Houthi militia, with the support of Iran, replicated exactly Hezbollah's model and grew in strength before taking over the capital city of Yemen and most of the north. Then they were a bit bolstered by the victories in the north. The Houthis, with Iranian support, miscalculated and advanced on the south, which they found to be unsustainable given the reaction of the southern resistance, which defeated the Houthis and forced them to retreat and leave the south. The Iranian objectives are to drain and keep the Saudis busy in the southern borders and to control Bab al-Mandab Strait and other strategic locations, like, for example, Sfatra Island, which would give them also a leverage to have influence over the main route of one of the world's most prominent sea passages, as well as control of Strait of Hormuz, which channels 20% of the world's oil production. Currently, as most of you will be aware of, the Houthis control of capital city of Yemen and most of the northern Yemen, and they continue to engage militarily with the Saudis on their borders. Significantly, the Houthis' military campaign to occupy the south and control Bab al-Mandab ultimately failed, as they were pushed back by the north to the north by the newly formed coalition of the southern resistance and the Saudis, the Emiratis coalition, which were mandated by the United Nations to intervene in Yemen. This new strategic alliance defeated the Houthis and prevented Iran from achieving its objectives of controlling a coastline of around 1,000 kilometers in the south that would have helped the smuggling of weapons to the Houthis. This resulted in hindering the Iranian support for them, and weapon smugglers would therefore have to sail an extra 1,500 kilometers via Bab al-Mandab in order to reach the Houthis' territory. In addition, the south also has around 700 kilometers of borders with the Saudis. That was also saved by the preventing the Houthis from taking it over. Well, unfortunately, Iran is pushing the Houthis to impose their system to change the Republic of Yemen to a theologian model state, to strengthen the grip on the country, which will lead to a continuous cycle of destabilization and instability. Iran, as you might all know, that Iran is always trying to use religion to penetrate the Arabian countries to cause instability, using the holy cities of Mecca, Medina, and Jerusalem also as their ultimate aim. The strategy of influence was also used by the Sunni political Islamic ideology of the Muslim Brotherhood, which serves as a common goal between the two sects, the Sunni and the Shia political Islamic ideologies. For example, in Palestine, there is Hamas, which is an evidence to that intersect of interest. In Yemen, this type of intersection has emerged also between the Houthis and the Islah Party in our region, which is also known in Yemen as the Muslim Brotherhood of Yemen. who also control the international recognized government. We in the Southern Transitional Council fought the Houthis and are continuing to fight them in our borders with the north. Our solid aim, as maybe most of you know, is to re-establish the state of South Arabia, which was once known as South Yemen. We believe that our aim will bring stability to our region, that will help also achieve combating Al-Qaeda, as well as keep Iran away of the 1,000 kilometers coastline, and keeping also Iran away from Bab al-Mandeb, the port of Aden, Socotra, and the 700 kilometers borders with Saudi Arabia. The re-establishment of the state of South Arabia also not only benefits the southern people, but it has an added regional dimension, as it will serve to be a line of defense against the destructive, unfortunately, the destructive Iranian influence in the region. This is I don't want to take that much long time, but this is my briefing on the intervention of Iran in the region. Thank you, and I hope that I give you the mic.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your explanation. It seems that the crisis in Yemen is very, very particular and very complex to understand, and some people sometimes are very manipulated by the media, while the media is telling people, especially in the Arab world, but also here in Europe. So it's very important to have very different versions and also very different, let's say, positions, especially in terms of the Yemeni government, and especially from you, in order to help the international community understand the problem and also help the people there, as I said, especially the children and also people calling for justice and freedom in Yemen. Thank you for this speech. I'm told that Mr. Abdelrazak is trying to join. So in the meantime, I think that we can give the floor to Maria Malouf before joining Mr. Dr. Abdelrazak, because he's a little bit, he has problem in connection. So Maria Malouf is the only Arab speaker here. We are very proud to have her as a speaker. She's a journalist, anchor, TV journalist, but also she's very famous for her positions against Hezbollah. So let me introduce Maria before moving to the Beirut blast, which was a very catastrophic incident, which was really tragic, and it really touched us a lot. I mean, Arab people, but also European people were really touched by this catastrophe, what happened in Lebanon and all the Arab community. So I think that we had a very professional and a very skilled person to speak about it. So Maria Malouf is one of the most important journalist, Lebanese broadcaster, publisher, and writer. She holds a master's in political sociology from the University of Lyon. She's also suing Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah on allegation of kidnap, rape, and murder charges. In supporting legal documents, Malouf also listed any person who appears to be an active, interfering partner or an investigator who helped Hezbollah as in incitement and participation of murder and committing acts of kidnapping, torture, rape, displacement, committing war crimes, crimes of genocide, and crimes against humanity in Syria, Yemen, Bahrain, and Iraq. Malouf, who belongs to the Christian Maronite community of Lebanon, is well known for her anti-Hezbollah and Syrian regime stances. One of her best quotes is, Lebanon is weak because Hezbollah is strong. Yes, I would leave the floor to Mrs. Maria Malouf. Very honored to have you here today with us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this introduction. As you know, I can't go back to Lebanon because of the threats against me. So I would say good morning from Washington, D.C. And thank you for inviting me to this webinar concerning the Iran threats and the peace and security in the Middle East. Last year, ladies and gentlemen, and this year brought new chapters in the uprising of people affected by the Iranian regime in rejection of its reckless and destructive policies at home and abroad. We saw revolutions in Iraq and in my country, Lebanon, against the Iranian sectarian project, which is hostile to the Arab people. And in my country, through its Hezbollah militia, Iran tried to change Lebanon's Arab identity. But the people there rose up against the face of the sectarianism and called for the harnessing of all energies to confront this destruction sponsored by the mullah's regime. We all know that the explosion of tons of ammonium nitrate that was stored in a warehouse in Beirut port killed at least 200 people, injured thousands, and displaced hundreds of thousands. And the huge explosion tore apart the most vital residential and commercial neighborhoods in Beirut. Also, no evidence emerged that Hezbollah had a role in keeping 2,750 tons of ammonium nitrate in the port. Many Lebanese critics assume that the group was aware of the stockpile because its members are deeply rooted throughout the country's security apparatus. Furthermore, a week ago, the official government and media of Lebanon failed to obtain the truth about the Ain Qana explosion, and it may never be revealed. But what is certain is that Iran is filling Lebanon with its terrorist party with hundreds of thousands of missiles and military pieces, and every Lebanese citizen does not know how things will be in the future because we are forced to be an Iranian colony. And we have all read the recent report, the US State Department on Iran's illegal activities. The report's fourth chapter focused on the illegal activities and tricks used by Iran and its militias to finance terrorist acts in the world and threaten the safety and security of the international financial system, while the sixth chapter focused on Iran's human rights record. It reveals arbitrary arrest, brutal and deadly repression, and cutting off of vital communications, and in the absence of transparent systems and investigations to hold perpetrators accountable. All of you see what is happening in our Arab spheres. Whoever occupies Al-Ahwaz cannot rightfully claim the liberation of Palestine. And whoever boasts about the occupation of 4 Arab capitals, he cannot at all harbor goodness to the Arabs. Our brothers Arabs in Iraq are being killed today at the hands of the Iranian regime's agents, who face the darkness of the mullah's era and their agents in the region. Therefore, we called for the European Union and human rights organizations at the United States to monitor and document the human rights violations committed by the Iranian regime against the Ahwazis, as well to monitor the human rights situation and then to address the aggressive behavior of the Iranian regime in the region and its repressive practice toward the Ahwazi people in particular, and also against their own Iranian people. All of us have a real political and moral responsibility toward these issues. In the meantime, the curses will haunt the Iranian regime, which has harnessed all its capabilities to practice the worst types of injustice and to interfere in the affairs of its neighbors and cause harm for the people of the region. We will fight Hezbollah together and all other terrorist organizations sponsored by the mullah's regime until the end. Thank you for listening, and God bless you all.
Thank you very much, dear Maria from Lebanon and from Washington, D.C. Thank you for joining us. We are very pleased and we are honored to have you. I think that you as an Arab woman, what you are doing in let's say, in confronting Hassan Nasrallah is really inspiring, and also your courage, your bravery, and your work as a journalist in transmitting the truth of what is really happening in Lebanon is really inspiring. Thank you very much, and we hope that people who would like to have questions could have some questions later. And we pray for the people in Lebanon, and you have all our solidarity and support, actually.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. So let's move to our last speaker before the Q&A session. He is Dr. Abdelrazak Rahim Ashamari, who is an Iraqi politician. He has a PhD in Islamic economics and political science. He is professor at the University of Baghdad and a number of Arab universities. He's the official spokesman for the United Iraqi National Movement from 2003 till 2005, member of the General Secretariat of the Iraqi National Founding Conference 2003-2011, and the official of external relations of the Sixth Uprising Governors 2013, and also the official spokesman of the Anbar Sit-in Square. He is the Secretary General of the group rejecting Iranian expansion from 2015 till 2020. Dr. Al-Shamari, we are very honored and thrilled to have you today. The floor is yours.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السادة المؤتمرون المحترمون، تحية طيبة. يسرني ويشرفني أن أتحدث أمام حضراتكم عن تهديدات إيران للأمن والسلم في الشرق الأوسط بشكل عام، وعن تهديداتها وتأثيرها على استقرار الوضع في العراق بشكل خاص. من المعلوم لدى الجميع بأنه منذ قيام ما يسمى بالثورة الإسلامية بأن النظام الإيراني أصبح يشكل خطراً ليس على دول المنطقة فقط، وإنما على الأمن والسلم في منطقة الشرق الأوسط بشكل عام. ويمكننا القول بأن تأثير إيران على الأمن والسلم في منطقة الشرق الأوسط بدأ منذ استبدال نظام الشاه في إيران بنظام الملالي في الأحداث الدراماتيكية التي جرت عام 1979، واستلام الخميني لكافة السلطات في البلاد، كونه فرض نظام حكم ولاية الفقيه، واعتبر ثورته ثورة إسلامية يجب تعميمها على جميع الدول الإسلامية، وعلى وجه الخصوص المنطقة العربية المجاورة لإيران. ومما فاقم هذا الأمر هو أن الدستور الذي اعتمده نظام خميني تضمن مادة تصدير الثورة الإسلامية. ولقد أغناني ممثل دولة البحرين الشقيقة عن الحديث عن حقيقة التهديدات الإيرانية لدول المنطقة، بدءا من الأحواز العربية وانتهاء بالعراق وسوريا ولبنان واليمن الشقيق. لذلك سوف أقتصر في حديثي على تدخلات الإيرانية بشؤون العراق فقط. تهديدات إيران وتأثيرها على استقلال واستقرار العراق بعد عام 2003. الآن نبدأ الحديث على عدد من الجوانب الرئيسية التي كان لها تأثيرا مباشرا على استقلال العراق واستقراره بسبب نفوذ إيران المهيمن على جميع مفاصل الدولة العراقية الآن، ونلخصها بالآتي. أولا، الجانبين الأمني والعسكري. 1. قيام فيلق بدر ومعه أنصار أحمد الشلبي بعد الاحتلال مباشرة بعمليات اغتيال ممنهجة لعدد كبير من الضباط والطيارين، خصوصا الذين شاركوا بالحرب العراقية الإيرانية. وكذلك طالت عمليات الاغتيالات العلماء والكفاءات لإفراغ العراق من علمائه وكفاءاته. 2. تأسيس الميليشيات خارج نطاق الأجهزة الأمنية منذ عام 2003، والتي تضاعف عددها وقويت شوكتها بعد تسليم المالك الموصلة وأكثر من ثلث العراق لداعش عام 2014، حتى وصل عددها أكثر من 70 فصيلا بحجة مواجهة داعش، معتمدة في ذلك على ما تسمى بفتوى الجهاد الكفائي التي أصدرها السيستاني عام 2014 أيضا، والتي أصدرت حكومة بغداد لها قانونا خاصا اسمته قانون الحشد الشعبي، لتصبح هي القوة الضاربة في العراق بدلا عن الجيش والأجهزة الأمنية الأخرى، وتصبح أداة لنشر الإرهاب وتفشي الجريمة المنظمة، وفي مقدمتها جرائم السطو المسلح وعمليات الاغتيالات مجهولة السبب، إضافة إلى تهديدها الأمن والسلم ليس في العراق فقط وإنما في جميع دول المنطقة، والتي هي تهدد الآن سفارات وقواعد الدول الصديقة في العراق. 3. تهميش دور وزارتي الدفاع والداخلية والأجهزة الأمنية الرسمية من خلال دمج بعض الميليشيات الإجرامية فيها وسيطرتها على القرار الرسمي في تلك الوزارات. 4. إغراق وزارتي الدفاع والداخلية بما يعرف بضباط الدمج، وهم أفراد تابعون للأحزاب الموالية لإيران، ومنحهم الرتب العالية، بحيث أصبح هناك ترهل بتلك الرتب، حيث أصبح عددها يفوق قريناتها في أغلب جيوش العالم وأقواها. وقبل أن أنهي حديثي عن الجانبين الأمني والعسكري، أود القول بأن الوضع الأمني في العراق يزداد سوءا يوما بعد يوم، وليس كما يروج البعض، خاصة بعد تمادي الميليشيات الإرهابية واستهدافها للبعثات الدبلوماسية بصورة متكررة، لا سيما بعد مقتل الإرهابيين قاسم سليماني وأبو مهدي المهندس، والتي كان آخرها البيان الذي أصدره قبل يوم أمس ما يسمى أصحاب الكهف، والتي هدد فيها سفارات أمريكا والسعودية والإمارات وتهديد مصالحها في العراق بشكل واضح وصريح. ثانيا، الجانب السياسي. 1. نتيجة لسيطرة الأحزاب الموالية لإيران على كافة مفاصل الدولة بقوة السلاح، فإن غالبية المناصب السياسية يشغلها أشخاص من هذه الأحزاب اشتهروا بعدم الكفاءة وعدم النزاهة، وغالبيتهم لا يحمل أي مؤهل علمي. والأنكى من ذلك أن عددا منهم اشتهروا بإجرامهم بحق الشعب العراقي. 2. الهيمنة على قرارات المحكمة الاتحادية في كثير من المواقف بأمر من إيران وعملائها، وعلى وجه الخصوص ما تجلى بتفسير المحكمة للمادة 76 من الدستور بعد فوز القائمة العراقية في انتخابات عام 2010، حيث فسرت المحكمة تلك المادة على عكس ما أراد المشرع منها وما هو معمول به في كافة ديمقراطيات العالم، فذلك لمنع فوز الدكتور علاوي من فوز الدكتور علاوي وتسلمه منصب رئيس الوزراء، كونه علماني وعرف عنه عداؤه المعلن بتدخل إيران ونفوذها في العراق. 3. تزوير الاستفتاء على الدستور في سنة 2005 وتزوير كافة الانتخابات البرلمانية وخاصة انتخابات عام 2018 وما رافقها من حرق مقرات حفظ صناديق الاقتراع والتلاعب بأصوات الخارج وأصوات النازحين والمهجرين، مما أدى إلى مقاطعة غالبية الشعب العراقي لها لأنه يعرف النتائج سلفا، وذلك بتدوير نفس الوجوه المتسلطة والمتحكمة بالقرار في العراق. وكانت نسبة المشاركة في تلك الانتخابات لا تتجاوز 17%، في حين أن السلطة الحاكمة في العراق أعلنت أن نسبة المشاركة فيها تجاوزت 45% حتى تكون مقبولة دوليا. ثالثا، الجانب الاقتصادي وهو الأهم. 1. نتيجة لتفشي الفساد المستشري في كافة وزارات ودوائر الدولة من قبل الأحزاب الموالية لإيران، فإن الموازنات التجارية التي تم تخصيصها قد سرقت بالكامل من قبل تلك الأحزاب، مما أدى إلى ارتفاع ديون العراق الخارجية والداخلية، شأنه شأن الدول الفقيرة في العالم رغم أنه يعتبر من الدول الغنية. 2. من أبواب الفساد الشهيرة في العراق هو مزاد العملة الصعبة في البنك المركزي الذي يسيطر عليه حزب الدعوة العميد لإيران، بحيث أن البنك يبيع يوميا ما يقارب من 300 مليون دولار بفواتير وهمية لبنوك أهلية عبارة عن دكاكين، وتهرب هذه العملة الصعبة إلى إيران. 3. سيطرة الأحزاب الموالية لإيران والميليشيات التابعة لها على الموانئ والمطارات وكافة المنافذ الحدودية عدا منافذ إقليم كردستان، والاستيلاء على غالبية موارد تلك المنافذ. 4. قيام الأحزاب الموالية لإيران بسرقة النفط وتصديره رغم سيطرتها على وزارة النفط وشركة تصدير النفط سومو. 5. سرقة الأموال المخصصة للبطاقة التموينية، بحيث أصبح لا تصل إلى المواطن العراقي مفردات البطاقة التموينية سوى مادة أو مادتين، وغالبيتها تالفة لا تصلح للاستخدام البشري، في حين كانت مفردات البطاقة التموينية قبل عام 2003 تتكون من 20 مادة وأكثر. 6. إن عدد موظفي الدولة 5 مليون موظف لا يذكر لهم أي إنتاج، وهي بطالة مقنعة، وإن عدد المتقاعدين 4 مليون متقاعد، وإن عددا كبيرا منهم هي أسماء وهمية، مع وجود دوائر استحدثت لسرقة المال وتأمينها لإيران وعملائها. ومن هذه الدوائر دائرة السجناء السياسيين ومؤسسة الشهداء ودوائر الرعاية الاجتماعية، وهذه الدوائر تستنزف الكثير من ميزانية الدولة لأشخاص وهميين كلهم تابعين للأحزاب الموالية لإيران. 7. غالبية شباب العراق الذي أكمل دراسته الجامعية بعد عام 2003 هم عاطلون عن العمل ولم يحصلوا على فرصة للتعيين إلا بعد الانتماء إلى تلك الأحزاب أو دفع رشوة كبيرة للمسؤولين في الدولة العراقية. ونظرا لضيق الوقت فإني سأترك الحديث عن الجوانب الاجتماعي والصحي والتعليمي والخدمي للقاء آخر. اتفاقية السلام، لا تفوتنا الإشارة إلى اتفاقية السلام التي تم عقدها مؤخرا بين دولتي الإمارات العربية والبحرين من جهة وإسرائيل من جهة أخرى، لأنها من وجهة نظرنا هي مبادرة ستنهي حالة من الصراع العربي الإسرائيلي دام 72 عاما تضرر فيها الطرفان بالأرواح والأموال، وكان لا بد لموقف شجاع من هذه الحالة، فكانت المبادرة من الأشقاء في الإمارات والبحرين بدعم أمريكي. ونحن في الوقت الذي نشجع فيه هذا الاتفاق نشدد على حقوق أشقائنا الفلسطينيين في العيش بكرامة وحرية ضمن حل يرضي جميع الأطراف. وهنا أود أن أشير إلى أن إيران الذي ترفض عملية التطبيع بين دولة الإمارات العربية ودولة البحرين الشقيقتين وإسرائيل بحجة الدفاع عن الأقصى هي الآن تحتل أرضا عربية مساحتها 3 أضعاف مساحة فلسطين، وهي كل من الأحواز العربية وجزر الإمارات العربية ال3، لكنها تستخدم ورقة الأقصى والقدس لتكسب بها عواطف الجهلة والعوام من المسلمين. كلمة أخيرا أود أن أوضح للجميع بأن هناك جهة يمكن من خلالها إنقاذ العراق ودول المنطقة من خطر الميليشيات الإرهابية التابعة لإيران بدون أن تسيل قطرة دم واحدة أو تطلق رصاصة واحدة، وهو رجل الدين الإيراني علي بن محمد السيستاني، وذلك من خلال إصداره بيانا أو فتوى جديدة يلغي فيها فتواه السابقة التي تسمى فتوى الجهاد الكفائي، والتي أصدرها عام 2014 بحجة مواجهة داعش الإرهابية، وذلك نظرا لزوال الخطر الذي صدرت تلك الفتوى بسببه، حيث أنه تم والحمد لله إضعاف داعش الإرهابية إن لم نقل القضاء عليها، ذلك لأن أكثر من 90% من الميليشيات الإرهابية بين قوسين الحشد الشعبي قد تم تشكيلها بعد صدور هذا الفتوى وتحت غطائها. وعليه فإننا نحمل السيستاني مسؤولية جميع الدماء التي سالت والتي ستسيل مستقبلا في العراق لا سامح الله إذا لم يصدر فتوى جديدة تلغي فتواه السابقة وتدعو إلى حل الميليشيات بين قوسين الحشد الشعبي. شكرا لحسن إصغائكم، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Thank you very much. شكرا Dr. Ashamari. Thank you very much, Dr. Ashamari, who mentioned so many interesting ideas. I try to summarize more or less the speech. So he spoke about the Islamic Revolution in Iran, which was not only a threat to Iran, but also to the whole Middle East. He spoke also about the stability of Iraq from 2003. And what the Iranian militia did is really horrific, because it killed the scientific people, the skillful people in Iraq, and established a militia with a pretext to counter Daesh, to counter ISIS. But it becomes a terrorist organization against the army and assassinated so many personalities in Iraq. There were also the penetration of the militia in the government and the Ministry of Interior. The problem of corruption, the security and the army is really from bad to worse, which is not the case, which is not vehiculed in the media. What is vehiculed in the media is that the situation in Iraq is really stable and everything is going from let's say, from an unstable situation to a stable one, and we are having again new government, but which, according to Dr. Ashamari, this is not true, because there was a series of, let's say, threats to the embassies of UAE, Saudi Arabia, and USA after killing Qasem Soleimani in Iran. Most of the political positions and the political leaders are pro-Iranians, and they have no qualification at all. The Minister of Justice is also the Ministry of Justice is also penetrated by pro-Iranian militia, and the doctor Al-Mani, who was supposed to be a prime minister and who was against the regime, didn't win the election because there were modifications in the election, and they said that only 17% of people, they said 45% of people voted, but only 17% did. There was a corruption within the political parties who are pro-Iranian, corruption in terms of money laundering, the control of pro-Iranian militia of the airports, which is the case of Lebanon, of course, and also ports and petrol stations. There are 5 million employees who are pro-Iran, and they receive salaries without doing any work, and 4 million retired also receive salaries, but they support the militia in Iran without working. The young people are jobless, so this is a huge problem in Iraq. And at the end, he really wants to congratulate Israel, Bahrain, and United Arab Emirates for the peace deal. He said it's a very good initiative. It puts an end to a conflict between Israel and the Arab world, and it's a brave step. But at the same time, he supports also a solution, a peaceful solution, and he supports the right of the Palestinian state. And he said that Iran refuses the peace deal because it uses the pretext that it wants to defend Al-Aqsa Mosque and it wants to free Jerusalem. But at the end of the day, it is colonizing Al-Ahwaz, which is an Arab country, and nobody cares. So he said that at the end he wants to leave a message for people, especially in the region, by telling that there is an imam who is Ali bin Muhammad Sattani, who is giving fatwas, and he gave a fatwa for 90% of the militia to kill, let's say, the people in ISIS. But he said that if he continues with this fatwa, people are going to continue killing. So he wants him to stop these fatwas and not to support a pro-Iranian militia. So that's more or less what he mentioned. I would like now to move to the final speaker. Actually, I'm sorry, because there was a speaker who wanted really to intervene, who is Mr. journalist Amjad Taha, who is a British and Ahwazi journalist. He is very famous in Britain, but also in Al-Ahwaz, and he is the author of the book, The Deception of Arab Regional, The Deception of Arab Spring, and the regional director at the British Middle East Center for Studies and Research. Dr. Taha, the floor is yours. He has a 5 minutes intervention.
Well, it's distinguished delegates, thank you for this opportunity. Let me start with a Jewish quote that says in Hebrew, "Kol mashim machoshil adam yachol lihagot, wali hamin bo ho yachol lihasig." Whatever the mind of a man can conceive and believe, it can be achieved. And I believe today, together from Tel Aviv to Ahwaz to Abu Dhabi to Manama and Aden, all around the world, we should be able to achieve the end of Iran threat at peace and security in the Middle East. Many crimes and massacres in the world occurred because people were late to speak about the truth, or some knew about the wound and decided to place a plaster of silence over it, and for the sake of the public interest. And because of the public numbing silence, countries delayed moving against Hitler. And we witnessed the evilest Holocaust because of that, and genocide against the Jews in Europe. The Jews were in farms of Poland and some areas in Germany screaming, "Oh, save us! Oh, the world, save us!" However, they used to call all Arab nations, all the nations, asking them to recognize what they were enduring, from unlawful arrest, kidnapping, execution, ethnic cleansing, but the world chose to ignore. Today, the Arab people of Al-Ahwaz are going through what the Jews went through in the era of the Nazis. In Iran today is no different from the Nazi Germany with its racist practice and ethnic cleansing towards the people of Ahwaz. I rather would say we do not think there is anyone who will understand what the Ahwazis are going through in terms of persecution, and as much as the people of Europe and Israel and the Jews especially, who encountered such a heinous act. What the world knows about Ahwaz is very little, nothing, little to nothing, to be honest. The world doesn't know about the 1925 when Iranian occupation of Ahwaz happened, or the inhuman environmental situation the Ahwazis are facing. All the world is not even aware of the human rights, and the Ahwazi people are prevented from from everything, including the education and so on, and all the occupational restriction. All that is happening few steps away from the Iranian nuclear base in Bushehr, South Ahwaz. According to the European Ahwazi Human Rights Organization, the unjust system in Iran affects every Ahwazi in multiple ways through their right to education, their health and well-being, their social life, their political life, in so many other aspects of their life. Safety is not determined, is definitely not guaranteed at all to the Ahwazi citizens by the Iranian regime. In fact, the Iranian regime follows the Ahwazi refugees in Europe and either murder them or create a lobby or a fraud case against them to mute their voice of freedom and put them behind the bars. To be a non-Persian in Iran, you must accept the discrimination that comes with it. It's like being a non-Nazi in Germany in Hitler time, or being a Jew in Gaza now, which has been occupied by Hamas, the Iranian-backed militia, or being a Southern Arabian or from South Yemen in Sana'a, which has been occupied by the Houthi northern militias. The unjust criminal and common laws system are one of the Iran many forms of discrimination against the Ahwazi citizen. Any non-Persian is not protected by the law, just like how the Jews were not protected by the law in the Nazi Hitler time. Instead, the Ahwazis are targeted as a criminal and are subjected to social crimes as violence. Iran has actively abducted over 26,000 Ahwazi over years. 6,000 of them are females, women, and on a daily basis, Ahwazi people are being taken from their places and are meant to, in the places where meant to be safe, such as their homes, their schools, their workplace, and so on, and even from the street. In order I think in order for this issue to be solved, there need to be organizations, countries, association, which can assist the Ahwazi community. The organizations, association, or even countries will help to speed the process of gaining a safer or a less discriminative environment for Ahwaz. And a perfect example of this, it could be the successful story of how people of Israel and Europe helped in highlighting the Kurds' cause in the Middle East, and I believe such a support should be available to the people of Al-Ahwaz and their representative, such as the Arab struggle for the liberation of the Al-Ahwaz movement, or at least the Ahwazi cause should be taught in the schools of education. Together, yes, we stand, and that's why the people of Al-Ahwaz, alongside everyone still celebrating the UAE, Bahrain, and Israel, announcing the historic deal, the peace deal with Israel. Now this move towards peace and prosperity, and eventually reaching a peace for Palestinians and supporting their right to reach a fair deal with Israel. Who doesn't like that? I tell you who. All the radical members of the Iranian regime who are the Nazis in the Middle East right now. The Iranian have a problem with the Arab countries. They are fascist, racist towards all kind of the Arab parts apart from the militias. Since 1970s, the Iranian have occupied three of the UAE island. They're killing millions of the Arabs they killed millions of the Arabs in a war in Iraq, Syria, Yemen, and supports the terrorist attack in Bahrain, Saudi, and Kuwait. And if the Palestinians, PLO, or the militias had any support, when the Palestinians laminated the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, the terrorist commander of the Iranian Islamic Revolutionary Guard and the most loose individual in Iraq and Syria and the Gulf state. It was the final straw from our perspective. They called this hideous guy a martyr of Shalim, Jerusalem. This was a breaking point for the Arab support for such a militias, if any. So since I'm not going to take longer than this, and since the silence is the real crime against humanity, let's all affirm on what Elie Wiesel swore to, never to be silent whenever, wherever a human is being injured, suffering, or being humiliated. We must take side. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the terminator, never the tormented. Yes, silence is the real crime against humanity, and I'm asking you all to raise awareness and help us to put a stop to the cruel, inhuman treatment of the Ahwazi people and the ethnic minorities in Iran and the people of Iran. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Amjad Taha from the British, regional director, of the British Middle East Center for Studies and Research. So let's move to the Q&A session. I leave the floor to my friend Ruth. Yes.
Thank you so much for the updates. I think, it's a long time since we started from the beginning to now. I personally found it really, obviously I have been in conversations before, but I found it really interesting to hear all these different perspectives. Dr. Khalaf, I remember that the first time you met, you always referred to the Jewish people as cousins. Do you remember? You were saying, dear cousins, dear cousins.
That's right.
So maybe, and you told me that there was a history in your land of Jewish neighbors and Jewish tradition. Maybe you want to speak to us a little bit about that. And I understand that the Jewish community in Iran, they feel very close to their culture there. And unfortunately nowadays, that cannot flourish, but I really believe that it should. So maybe you can speak to us a little bit about that.
Thank you very much. Let me say that I consider this a qualitative move towards stability and a bright future. Personally, I seek this noble goal, and I hope to see all countries getting closer to each other instead of war and chaos. Well, as a matter of fact, yes, Jews are our cousins. We're carrying the same blood. And I was just talking to my father one day. Guys were talking about, our relations and my seventh grandfather and our late grandfathers, the seventh grandfather of the Prophet Muhammad, Ka'ab bin Lu'ay, he was a Jew. So yeah, just imagine anyway. And the Prophet Muhammad himself was so close to the Jew. He was working with them, he was dealing with them, and he was calling them cousin. Sometimes I just surprised, how the Iranian regime or Khamenei or the other gangs are trying to deny these things. Yes, we are very close by blood and we know each other very well. We did not take the Jew as our enemies at all. Even from when I was just quite young, my father was telling me that your seventh grandfather was Jew. I said, who was that? He said, Salim al-Kabi, one of the fathers of Salman al-Kabi, my late grandfather, who used to be the ruler of Al-Ahwaz in those days. And yes, we are so close to each other. I believe that we need to work on this matter. We need to educate a major part of the people who did not know this. And we need the Jew also to take some actions from their end, from your end, anyway, to also educate their people that these guys are Semitic. Al-Ahwaz is a Semitic land. So that's why we welcome all Semitic, all Samis from any part of the world to our land. I hope we can just get, freed from the ongoing occupation from Iran and finish this tragedy. we are working very hard. I mean, last night we had a very, couple of hours meeting in connection with this matter. We were talking, that I was threatened, to be very frank with you. I don't know how this, it was leaked, to that Khalaf is going to deliver a speech and congratulating UAE and Bahrain and Israel for getting, normalizing their relations between themselves. So I said, that's no problem. We're getting this type of threats on regular basis, so we don't care. As long as we could bring these two nations, as our cousins, and the other Arabian countries, and even the Muslims together, so we will be quite happy. We keep working on this, non-stop, and I hope this thing's gonna happen. And just pray for us that we could, free our people and liberate our Al-Ahwaz land, which used to be independent for thousands of years. So it was only occupied in 1925. I hope we could get, the moral, support and political support from our friends, in different parts of the world anyway.
Thank you. I want to say to the rest of the webinar that Dr. Khalaf already invited me, so I look forward to the day that I can come and visit you in person and see the land for myself. I wanted to ask, if possible, to the Member of Parliament from Bahrain, maybe you can let us know how attitudes are changing in the younger generation. How do you see things, not just in the political world, but in the everyday life of people? How do people talk about the new development? You need to unmute yourself. We cannot hear you. You need to unmute yourself from the phone.
Is the question for me or?
No, for me.
Member of Parliament from Bahrain, yes.
Thank you for your question. This is a very good question, actually, and very objective question. But excuse me, I speak in Arabic because I will be exhibiting more in Arabic because this is my main language. في الحقيقة أستاذ ممكن can you please translate later on? Okay. في الحقيقة يعني احنا نتكلم عن اتفاق السلام بين البحرين ودولة إسرائيل أو بين مملكة البحرين ودولة إسرائيل. في الحقيقة يعني هذا الاتفاق هو يعني اتفاق سيادي يعني بالمصالح العليا لمملكة البحرين، وهو يصب في مصلحة القضية الفلسطينية أساساً، لأن أي اتفاق بين الدول العربية أو أي دولة عربية وإسرائيل معناها أن هناك اتصال مباشر ويساعد على حل القضية الفلسطينية ويساعد كذلك على بسط الأمن والسلام في الأراضي العربية أو في الشرق الأوسط. فبالتالي أعتقد بأن دعم هذه الاتفاقيات بين الدول العربية واجب، كما أن يعني تقبل اتفاقية السلام في المجتمع البحريني يعني لاقى استحسان الكثيرين في الحقيقة الذين ينظرون إلى اتفاقيات السلام على أنها هي اتفاقيات سلام وليست تقوم على مبدأ الحرب والمعاداة، لأننا لم يعني نكسب من الحروب غير الدمار وغير التأخر والتخلف وضياع مقدرات الشعوب والتشريد يعني المواطنين والبشر في المنطقة. فبالتالي أعتقد بأن هذه الاتفاقية اتفاقية جدا في الحقيقة يعني إيجابية ويجب دعمها بكل الوسائل، سواء على مستوى الإعلام أو على مستوى الاقتصاد أو حتى على مستوى التربية والتعليم والثقافة والسياحة، فهذا يصب في مصلحة الجميع. ومن يعادي أو يحاول العمل على زعزعة أو يعني خلينا نقول على التشكيك في نوايا هذا الاتفاق إنما هو يعني يتاجر بالقضية الفلسطينية. من يريد حل القضية الفلسطينية فعليه أن يجلس على طاولة التفاوض، وطاولة التفاوض تنتج أو تنتهي بعملية السلام التي تعم المنطقة بأكملها وكفانا حروب وكفانا تدمير. شكرا.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. So, Mr. Jamal Bouhassan spoke about the interest, the common interest between Bahrain and UAE and Israel, but also he spoke about supporting the Palestinian cause, and it's also a good step to solve this issue, because peace and security in the Arab world is a good deal, and it's also a duty for the Arab countries to support it. The Bahraini society is very happy with that. People are really happy with that. They want to stop war, they want to stop conflict, and they want to start with projects like education, like tourism, and people who want to get peace with the Palestinian, speaking about the Palestinian Authority, they should sit on the negotiation table and negotiate for peace. So that's more or less the message. I move to Mr. Martuccello, final closing remarks, because I think that we are running out of time.
Sure.
Yes, MEP Martuccello, please, the floor is yours. Thank you.
The EU and Israel support and stand with the Kurds in Iraq and the success of this project there, especially with regard to the current situation through Iran's political geographic, and since the struggle movement of Al-Wazi initiated the rapprochement of relations, and is the party controlling the movement in that region. They can build a fruitful partnership between the two parties. I want to say thank you to everybody. I was really glad to host this meeting, and I am sure that the Parliament will control everything is the useless for the freedom in Iran and everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you, MEP Martuccello. So we have the support of the European Union to support the human rights and inequality in the Iranian region, and also the peace deal. Ruth, would you like to say a word before the closing this webinar?
I wanted to say that myself and Eli Hassan from Israel, we are available anywhere you invite us. Even in Iran, we're willing to go anywhere. We're very adventurous people. Eli, maybe you want to say something in closing.
Yes, Eli?
We really look forward anywhere you invite us. We're happy to come and have that conversation.
I invite you to Bahrain.
I will gladly come.
Thank you very much. I would like to thank you and for organizing that. It's very important. I would like to thank everybody. Maria, I admire you because you are very courageous, and I admire the rest of the people here because this is the first time on the table. Thank you, Dr. Anat Berko, for coming. I hope we will have nation for this kind of meetings in order to change the destiny of the region.
Thank you. Thank you all. I would like to thank everyone for joining, and I would like also to thank Ahwazna.net, who is a channel, which is a channel by our journalist and friend Nasser Aziz, who is transmitting live this event, this webinar, which will be also transmitted on so many Arab media and social channels, but also on the written channels. Thank you very much for doing that amazing job, Nasser Aziz. And thank you everyone for joining us. Thank you, Dr. Khalaf. Thank you, MEP Jamal Bouhassan, Eli Hazan, everyone, Your Excellency, Mr. Mohammed Fouad, and everyone. Thank you, Ruth, for making it real, because it was like a dream of bringing together all these people, and we are really happy to do that.
Thank you very much, and my thanks goes to everybody and to our cousins in Israel.